Let's talk about edging. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it harmful? Is it beneficial? Does it help you last longer, or does it give you premature ejaculation? Does it mess up your dopamine levels? The truth is that edging can be any of these. It really depends on how you are doing it. So edging is kind of a broad term that can mean very different things in the context of sexual pleasure. And what I'm talking about in this video is self-pleasuring or having sex without ejaculating at the end. So you're going to learn what kind of edging is actually beneficial for you, that can increase your sexual endurance and actually improve your sexual vitality, and then what kind of edging can be harmful, maybe upset your dopamine levels, make premature ejaculation worse, and other negative effects. So with that, let's dive into it. I'm Jonathan White. I've helped thousands of men from around the world learn to retrain their mind and bodies to last as long as they want in the bedroom, experience non-ejaculatory orgasms, and go into sex feeling calm and confident. Make sure you hit subscribe to stay notified when new videos like this are released, and make sure you get my free ejaculation control ebook through the link in the video description below. It's going to give you many techniques to master your ejaculation control. So let's start with the negative. What type of edging can potentially be harmful for you? And a bit of context here, I'm often getting asked by guys like, Jonathan, is edging good? Is it bad? Is it messing with my dopamine? And the thing is that this term can apply to a broad spectrum of sexual experiences. Some being good, some being bad, okay? Some harmful, some beneficial. So starting with the negative, the worst type of edging you could do would involve porn. If you're jerking off to porn, you know, you're in your room gooning, you got your mood lighting on, you got incense burning, you got 10 different screens of porn clips pulled up, and you're just going to town, you're probably gonna cause some issues with that. It's gonna completely mess with your dopamine receptors, desensitize your dopamine, meaning that you need more and more stimulation just to feel normal. This becomes a huge problem over time, causes porn-induced erectile dysfunction. So the number one thing, I do not recommend porn. Don't do this. Now, a common type of edging is where you're basically hovering right at the edge of ejaculation. You're at maximum stimulation, maximum arousal. You're right close to going over the edge, but just kind of hovering there, which feels good. It's fun, but there's some problems here. I used to do this a lot myself. When I was first learning sexual kung fu, and I was kind of piecing things together in the beginning, trying to figure out what the hell all this was about, how I have non-ejaculatory orgasms, experience ejaculation control. I remember I'd be hovering right at the edge of ejaculation. There'd be a lot of tension in my pelvic floor because I'd often be like squeezing to prevent from going over the edge. And I'd be like, well, I'm in control. Like technically I'm not ejaculating, I'm controlling myself. And then I'd go to have sex. And sometimes there was just this huge residual buildup of tension. And I'd be so sensitive that, once again, I was right at the edge of ejaculating, because that's what I had just been training my body to do, was to stay on that edge. And during sex, there was, it's a bit harder to control. It's beyond just the things that I'm doing. My partner's having an impact as well. What I realized was all this residual tension I'd built up in my own edging sessions was still there, and it just added more to what was happening during sex. So it became a bit disastrous. So what I realized is that this is the potential downside to edging. If you're going in a session by yourself, you're masturbating, sure, you're not using porn, that's great, but you're bringing yourself as quickly as possible to the edge, like where ejaculation's right there, but you're not ejaculating, but it's a lot of pleasure, it's a lot of stimulation, and you're just hovering there. What's often happening during this is that there's a lot of tension. I guarantee your pelvic floor is building up a lot of tension. It's like a spring loading the ejaculatory buildup. There's probably tension in your body as well. You're probably tensing up various areas without realizing it. Your breath gets really short. You're not even aware of your breathing at all. And so what this is doing is programming these things into your body. We could call this this is your form, your sexual form. It's like you go to the gym, you do exercises, you do workout, you're doing a deadlift, you're doing squats. Do you have good form or bad form, right? And the way that you practice these exercises over and over, you build muscle memory, and you're subconsciously doing these either in a beneficial way or with terrible form. Like we've all seen the dude at the gym doing deadlifts with a round back, doesn't know how to engage his core. It's a recipe for disaster. Same thing with sex, sexual edging. What you're practicing habitually is your form. It's how your body is going to react at a subconscious level, and that becomes ingrained. It becomes a habitual pattern. So the downside of edging is if, again, you have zero awareness of what's happening in your mind and body, and you're just seeking maximum stimulation, hovering right at that edge, building up a lot of tension, and again, when you walk away from the session, your dick's still a loaded gun, so to speak. If you go to have sex, you're probably gonna find that you're very, very sensitive and the slightest touch can send you over the edge. So that's the kind of edging that I don't recommend. And there's also the dopamine factor in all this. I'm gonna talk about that a bit later though, because there's a bit more context we have to cover. And what's a little more exciting, the good news, is the fact that edging can actually be practiced in a way that will build your ejaculation control, build your sexual vitality, and just make you feel a lot better in life in general. That may sound like a big promise, but let's get into it. Let's get into it. And I have a question for you first, just because it's an interesting question to consider. What were your early masturbation habits? As you reflect on this, I'll share what mine were. As a young teenager, I would sometimes I'd just rub one off really quickly, but a lot of the time, I would edge a lot. Like, we didn't have tube porn when I was, in my early teenage years. We had dial-up internet. So what I did have was like porn magazines, like Hustler magazine was one that my friend found in his dad's bathroom, so we passed that one around. Sometimes I'd print out these pictures, these porn pictures that I got from the internet. When my parents weren't home, I'd hook up internet, get the printer and print out pictures or have some 5-second pixelated video clips. So that's what I was working with. It's a little different now. But regardless, I would be, looking at these images and I'd bring myself right to the edge, but I'd hover there. I'd want to spend as long as I could at that edge because once I did ejaculate, it was a lot more intense. But what I realize now, when I got into sexual kung fu, one of the things that I had to do was retrain my pelvic floor to stay relaxed because that's the biggest contributor to premature ejaculation is that tension in the pelvic floor. And I started thinking about where did this pattern begin? Because I realized I have this tendency to just clench, as soon as I'm aroused or having sex, just clench down there. Because I remember my earliest masturbation experiences, probably the first several sessions, I didn't do that. I was completely relaxed. It was actually a lot of work to bring myself to an orgasm, and it was enjoyable. And the first orgasms I had were so intense, was because I didn't know to clench down there yet. But eventually, I developed this habit of clenching my pelvic floor because it brought me to higher levels of pleasure and stimulation, right? Just right at that edge of ejaculation. So just something interesting to consider, as you think about what were some habits that you developed early on that you still do now. If you practice not hovering at the edge of ejaculation, but further down from that point, if we take a scale of 1 to 100, a lot of people call this the arousal scale, but more accurately, it's a tension scale. Because when you hit 100, you ejaculate, or 1 to 10, 10 being ejaculation. Well, to get to that point, you have to build up a certain level of tension so that the fight or flight nervous system kicks in and the ejaculation happens. It's a tension response. So on that scale of 1 to 10, don't go above a 7, at least the majority of the time. That's the sweet spot of our sexual kung fu practice. So when you're hovering in that level, you focus on staying relaxed, breathing deeply, letting the body open up. This lets the nervous system open up and be more settled. So instead of hovering at the edge of ejaculation, like sympathetic nervous system kicking on, dopamine firing, you are hovering in this spaciousness of relaxation, parasympathetic nervous system state. You're not getting these huge dopamine spikes. It's a more level, balanced experience. This is the valley orgasm, they call it in tantric and Taoist practices. And initially it's a little less exciting because we're used to overstimulation. We've been programmed to basically, if we're not being overstimulated, we're not feeling anything. So there's a resensitization here. But that's one of the beauties of this practice is that you resensitize yourself to sustaining a less over-the-top level of excitement and sexual pleasure. But from that, you're able to sustain it more and intensify your experience of it more. You're at a more sustainable state where you're sustaining relaxation. And there's pleasure building, but it's not as over the top. And that pleasure can more effortlessly be integrated into your whole system, meaning your whole nervous system starts to buzz with this sexual pleasure and arousal. And when you sustain that over periods of time, you're training in a few different things. Number one, to not tense up. Because the moment you tense up, you find that your arousal veers closer towards ejaculation. So you back off, you relax. Breathe deeply. Full belly breathing. It's like ocean waves that helps you sustain sexual pleasure, intensifying it, but without bringing you closer to ejaculation. And then the other thing here is being aware of your whole body. Instead of just jackhammering my genitals, it's Let your body move, massage the rest of your body, get everything opened up so the pleasure becomes, again, integrated into your whole system. So what you're doing by this is edging. I mean, edging I think isn't even a great term for this, but we're implying that we're sustaining pleasure for a long period of time. Whatever word you want to use for this, what you're doing is retraining your body into a much better form. You have better form of sexual pleasure. And this becomes a habit. You have the habit of relaxing, not just tensing up and going for the maximum intense pleasure, but sustaining it. And you start to do this during sex as well. And guess what? You can sustain incredible pleasure, staying relaxed, staying in control. And as you relax into pleasure, instead of tensing up, trying to push more pleasure in, it naturally intensifies your orgasmic experience, your orgasmic threshold, we could say. And now the really interesting thing here, and the big concern for some people, is the dopamine thing. Every now and then I get people commenting on some of my videos saying, oh, this is gonna like completely mess up your dopamine. And you know, number one, it's a good thing to be concerned about, because we live in a world that gravitates towards like quick fix, unnatural dopamine release. Whenever you click on a video on TikTok, especially if you're like on porn, you're getting all this dopamine released, and it kind of overwhelms the brain. It's saying this isn't right. There's way too much dopamine firing off, and it fries your receptors so they become less sensitive. So you need more dopamine just to feel normal. This causes erectile dysfunction, causes low libido, all kinds of depression, anxiety, all kinds of things. I definitely understand the concern of dopamine, but what I always think of is like anyone typing these comments, you're on a computer or you're on a smartphone, you're interacting with an electronic screen. Obviously, you're not truly that concerned about dopamine, because if you were, you wouldn't be on there in the first place. Electronic devices, staring at a screen, browsing, is causing far more unnatural dopamine release in your body than any like organic sexual experience could. Like, yes, dopamine is being released during sexual activity. That's not a problem. You can't avoid dopamine being released. When you wake up in the morning and get out of bed, the first thing you do, every time you eat a meal, every time you walk into a different room, or like, you go to do something you want to do, you're getting dopamine releases all day. Dopamine isn't a problem. The more dopamine that you have in your system, the better, because dopamine is part of your libido and your drive. The problem is dopamine dysregulation, where the brain receptors lose their sensitivity to dopamine. And I do not think that happens from organic sexual experiences. Maybe if you're like spending a long time edging, like you spend 2 hours edging right at the edge of ejaculation, you could have some dopamine issues from that. But you'd have to really work to make that happen. But just like having if you have like a 15-minute self-pleasure practice, and especially if you're implementing what I'm talking about in this video, you are not going to have dopamine issues. I've never had dopamine issues from sexual kung fu practices. And I've had some marathon sex sessions, even marathon self-pleasure sessions, I won't lie. What fucks my dopamine up, if I spend an hour on the phone, doing tasks or on the screen, I can feel the fry in my brain from it. I've never felt that from healthy sexual activity. I have felt that when I was looking at porn or like over ejaculating, but I've never felt it from healthy sexual activity. So good to be concerned about, but again, if you're spending time on an electronic device, you're fucking up your dopamine way more, and you probably actually aren't that concerned about it. Your actions are proving otherwise. And then a quick note on how this relates to your vitality. I really believe that when it comes to our sexual health, it is a use it or lose it situation. But it's a use it properly, because if you're ejaculating every day, you're dumping out your vitality, you're overstimulating it, you're depleting yourself. You will lose it. Whereas when you're engaging in sex in a healthy way, the beneficial mode I was talking about in this video, you're exercising your endocrine system, you're releasing youthful hormones, and it creates this positive feedback loop. What I found is that anytime there was periods where I had less sexual interest, maybe lower libido, often there's hormonal and stress factors, but when I made it a point to prioritize some sort of pleasure practice, whether with my partner or with myself, I always found that there was this positive feedback to where the more I engage in sexual activity, the more that I desire it in a healthy way, not in like an impulsive, addictive way. Like that can also be a dynamic as well. But not only that, the more pleasure there is in my life, the more I lust for life, the more creative I am. I always find that when I'm engaging freely with my sexual energy, I'm far more creative, I'm far more driven, and I just feel a lust for life. Keeps me productive. It's kept me away from drinking alcohol, smoking weed, taking drugs, being on Pornhub for a very, very long time now. And there's no going back for me now. It's how it is when you live the sexual kung fu life. Now what I recommend that you do is watch a video I made called Breathe Like This to Last Longer in Bed. It's going to teach you a very specific breathing practice you can use to do what I was talking about in this video. retrain your system, especially your pelvic floor, to stay relaxed so that you can sustain levels of pleasure. So I'll put a link to that video. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Again, make sure you get my free ejaculation control ebook through the link in the video description. And have a great day, my friend. Take care.